Welcome in to another edition of Go Big or Go Home. I am Old Man Troy, all jacked up on great kickstart, joined by the youngster Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Well, I'm doing good. Looking at the Big Ten tournament, I've certainly watched more today than I did yesterday. I mentioned yesterday that the terrible co-host that I was, I did not watch a single second of either of the first two games. I researched about it and found out what happened and dove into the box scores, but I didn't see any of Penn State, Nebraska. I didn't see any of Rutgers, Ohio State. I went 0 for 2 in picking those games. So did you. Today, I go 3-1. You go a perfect 4-0, and there were 4 blowouts. So it's really your day today as far as picking games. And so 0-2 the first day, 4-2, 4-0 the second day. So now tomorrow you're obviously going to be, or today when listeners are listening to this show, we are talking about the Big Ten tournament, and this is after Tuesday's second round games. So you'll be listening to this on Wednesday at some point while those games are going on, probably on March 10th. And so, yeah, you went perfect today, and now you're going to go 0 for 4 tomorrow, right?
Probably. Yeah, I'm one of those guys when you look at the Iowa team tonight, very inconsistent, up and down. 0-2, 4-0, 0-4. Well, if I go 0-4, then I'm kind of screwed for the rest of the tournament. So, yeah, I could go 0 for the rest of the tournament. Who knows? I will give you this much, though. As we text throughout the day, you had even said a day of blowouts. A day of blowouts. You text that to me, and boom, you were right. All 4 games blowout. Now, the thing is, though, I didn't fall asleep after any of these games. So, yesterday when you look at Penn State, Nebraska, Rutgers, Ohio State, I was thinking, if anybody ever has insomnia and can't sleep, they should have taped those 2 games, and they could have just played them, and it would probably put them right to sleep. And I joked with you during the Northwestern-Rutgers game, time for a nap. Because, man, Northwestern just went out gangbusters. I thought Rutgers would be able to come out tonight, Kevin, and at least play with a little emotion and keep it close early. I was wrong. It was Northwestern was on a mission, and, yeah, it was Rutgers. You gotta remember it was number 14 Rutgers, but Northwestern came out, and they were on top of their game. They had struggled up until the Big Ten tournament, so I wasn't really sure how they were going to come out in their first game with those recent struggles, and I didn't care who their opponent was. I didn't know if there might be a little rust, but no rust for Northwestern. So let's work our way backward, Kevin. Northwestern over Rutgers, probably pretty much assumed, especially after Rutgers won. We thought Ohio State would be in that game. We thought Northwestern would still take care of Ohio State at that point. But my concern with Northwestern, and they kind of answered that question, I thought they'd have a little rust, and I didn't know how they'd come out with their recent woes. But those that have listened in, if you listen to our show every day, know that all of a sudden I'm drinking the purple kickstart and I'm drinking the Northwestern Kool-Aid. I have them in the Big Ten championship game. So today bodes well for me, Kevin, the way they played. Even though it was against Rutgers, when you watch the game, they executed very well, and they did the things they do well, which is play good defense. They rebounded, and they were shooting well today, 83 points. Again, it was against Rutgers, but I thought they played a pretty good all-around game when you're looking at Game 1 of the Big Ten tournament compared to the way they came into the tournament. I thought this is going to be a big confidence booster for Northwestern going against Maryland tomorrow because they had to have some doubt in their mind the way they'd been playing at the end of the regular season, but they went on and I thought played a pretty complete game tonight against Rutgers.
Couple things. I mean, just looking at the scores today, and it's tournament basketball, and so I guess before I get into Northwestern, Kansas lost to TCU today. So Kansas is not making the Big 12 semifinal. Baylor is about 10 seconds away from losing to Kansas State. So Baylor is not going to be making the Big 12 semifinal round either. So it's one thing to say that, hey, this is against Rutgers. And so Northwestern won by 22 points. Indiana won by 22 points. Michigan State won by 27 points. Michigan won by 20 points. Those are the games we're going over tonight. And you can say what you want about the quality of opponents, and a couple of these opponents were right there on the bubble, and they got blown out by 20 points. So it's one thing to beat a team by 20 points in general in the regular season, a bad team. But when it's conference tournament time and Rutgers just beat Ohio State by 9 to get to this round, and Rutgers was and I didn't know this, but Rutgers was the third best offensive rebounding team in the entire country coming into this game. The third best offensive rebounding team in the country. And we talked yesterday about how Rutgers had, I think it was 19 offensive rebounds against Ohio State. And we said, wow, that was insane. Well, they're the third best offensive rebounding team in the country. Today, they play Northwestern, and Northwestern wins the rebounding battle 33-19 in total. Rutgers had 19 rebounds as a team today in total against Northwestern. So Kansas lost, Baylor lost. They're not making the semifinal round. Northwestern, they did what they needed to do. So say what you want about who they played, but they're advancing. And so it's conference tournament time. This isn't a meaningless regular season game that you can just blow off and say, who cares? It's one of 30 games, whatever. It's a conference tournament game. This is Rutgers' last game of the season this year. So they're not making the NIT. They're not making the CIT. So this was it. And Northwestern completely took care of business. I didn't think they would have lost just because I believe in their coach. I think they've got about 7 guys that are very strong. So I think this is a very solid team. I don't think they have any incredible players. They don't have that Melo Trimble type guy. They don't have a Miles Bridges type talent. They don't have a Swanigan inside. They don't have, any insane dynamic scorers. Scotty Lindsey is a good scorer. But they've just got a bunch of solid guys. They've got a really good coach, I think, in Chris Collins, who could win Coach of the Year, in my opinion. That's how good he's done with this Northwestern team and this Northwestern program. Obviously, they're going to make their first NCAA tournament ever in program history. So hats off to Chris Collins, hats off to Northwestern getting the job done, winning by 22 points, and advancing to the next round. They beat a Rutgers team that likes to rebound the ball. Northwestern shot 60% from the field. They had 4 guys score at least 13 points. Northwestern did their thing, and you have them going to the title game. I personally think they're going to beat Maryland as well on Friday in the quarterfinal round to eventually match up with Wisconsin, but you think that's going to be a little different. And I expected Wisconsin to play Iowa, but that didn't happen.
No, it did not happen. So let's move into that game. An Indiana-Iowa game, you had mentioned that the last time these guys played, it was, 93-90 or 92-90, something like that. Both teams scored in the 90s. Well, Indiana didn't cool down. They put up 95 on Iowa tonight. And I'm going to tell you what, Kevin, they just shot the lights out. And I had said I thought Blackman was going to really step up his game here in the Big Ten tournament. He had a great game. But I'll tell you what, even without Blackman today, there was a number of complementary players on this Indiana team. They were amazing from three-point land. You had mentioned the stat, 12 out of 20. Now, you have to take this with a grain of salt because I don't think they can shoot 12 of 20 from three-point land for the next 3 games. But they did a lot today to at least get themselves back on the bubble. They were probably hanging on by a thread. They might now have their feet planted on the bubble. They're not in by any means. But if they can beat Wisconsin, and I think they're going to, if they can beat Wisconsin, now they get 1 foot off the bubble into the tournament. I think they've got to go to the championship game to be able to get into the NCAA tournament. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they can continue this hot shooting streak. But, man, they shot the lights out of the ball tonight, Kevin, and they started off strong. They played consistent throughout the whole game. And Iowa, though, you got to look at what Iowa did. They got behind the 8 ball. Basketball is a game of runs. Indiana went on a run. Iowa closed the gap, but then in the second half, Iowa went into a cold streak. And during that cold streak, Indiana just kept draining threes and giving them one and done on the offensive end. Then they'd go down and score, and Indiana put their foot on the gas in the second half and just pulled away. I said they're getting healthy. I thought they played really good defense tonight against a good Iowa team. Indiana, again, can they carry that over? I think they can continue to shoot. The nice thing about tournament basketball, Kevin, is when you get hot like this, you don't have to wait 3 days to play again. You got to turn around and play the next day. Now, could they go cold tomorrow? Sure, they could go cold tomorrow. But my point is, when you have confidence and you're shooting the ball well and you go out and play a good team and beat a good quality team in Iowa, you get to play again tomorrow. And so that confidence level is going to be there. And Wisconsin has struggled, Kevin. They have struggled mightily. But the thing with Wisconsin, I know I picked Indiana, but Wisconsin, for some reason, can play crappy in the first half, and then they turn around and they're a totally different team in the second half, and they like turn the light switch on and off, and they could totally dominate Indiana and blow them out. So my confidence level in Indiana is not 100%. I think Wisconsin could beat them. But I just like what Indiana's doing, and tonight when they played, there was a reason. It wasn't just Blackman. But I know that they can ride his shirt tails, but if he gets the support like he did tonight from all of those other guys, this Indiana team might be a little tough to beat, Kevin.
Yeah. Again, a couple things we talked about it. It was either yesterday or Monday. At least I mentioned that a common thing that people want to throw around with the game of basketball, no matter what level it is that, hey, if this team makes their shots, they're really hard to beat. And that's obviously true for anyone. If you shoot over 50%, or if you're like Northwestern and you shoot 60%, it doesn't matter what level of basketball you're playing. It doesn't matter anything. You shoot 60%, you shoot 50% from three, you're Indiana and you go 12 of 20 from three, of course you're going to be hard to beat. But what makes teams dangerous is teams that can do it on a fairly regular basis, go 12 of 20 from three. I mentioned Michigan as being that team that, you know what, if you're not going to have a top three team in the Big Ten tournament, win the tournament, it's going to be Michigan because they can get absolutely hot from three. Their point guard, Derek Walton Jr., had been playing, lights out his last 10 games coming into the tournament. So I expected Michigan to be one of those very dangerous teams. They proved it today, despite having God knows how many hours of sleep and having to play 3 hours after landing in D.C., they showed Illinois what can happen. That's a dangerous team that can make the three ball, and Indiana did exactly that today against Iowa, another bubble team playing for their lives. They kill them by 22 points. You mentioned Blackman. He had 23. He went 4 or 5 from three. Even if you take Blackman out of the equation, Indiana still shot 8 of 12 or 8 of 15 from three. They made over 50% of their threes without Blackman. They're stud. So Indiana can absolutely shoot the lights out. That's what makes teams dangerous to me. It isn't a team like Northwestern when they hit their shots. It's not a team like Michigan State when they hit their shots or whoever. It's a team that can do it on a fairly consistent basis that makes you say, wow, this team can really, be inconsistent throughout the year because they're young or because they had an injury over the course of the year or because their shots just weren't falling for 3 games. But when their shots do fall for 3 games, teams like Michigan can shoot the lights out for 3 games straight. Teams like Indiana can shoot the lights out for 3 games straight. That's what makes these teams really dangerous. Northwestern's not going to shoot 60%. They're not going to make over 50% of their threes for the rest of the tournament. If Indiana did that, I wouldn't be shocked. If Michigan did that, I wouldn't be shocked. Teams like Northwestern, I'd be shocked. I don't expect that to happen. You expect Northwestern to play really good defense. You expect Wisconsin to play really good defense. You don't expect those teams to make over 50% of their threes for a 3-4 game stretch to make a Final Four, to make a Big Ten final. But Indiana, Michigan, that wouldn't surprise me at all. So I think that if Michigan can get past Purdue, I basically expect Michigan to win the entire Big Ten tournament. If Indiana can get past Wisconsin, I think they would beat Northwestern. I think they would beat Maryland in the next round, and I could fully expect them to keep their hot streak going and beat whoever comes out of the top. whether it's Purdue or Michigan State or Minnesota. Doesn't matter because you've got a hot team shooting well. You mentioned it, tournament atmosphere. You're playing day after day, especially Indiana, a team that knows they have to win this next game. It was a really nice win, beating Iowa by 22 points, a clear bubble team. Now Indiana's really going to be on the bubble. They're going to be watched. And it's like, okay, now you're playing a real team against Wisconsin who's had rest, who, when they do turn it up, they are a 3-seed, 4-seed type team who blows out other tournament teams by 20 points in a single half. That's what Wisconsin's done. They've gone 2-5 in their last 7 games, but those 2 games that they won, they outscored Maryland in one half by like 17 points, and then they outscored Minnesota by like 19 points. So that's how they've been winning games lately when they do win games. So Wisconsin's dangerous too, but Indiana, I could fully expect them, to ride out this 3-point stretch. They're a very dangerous team. I thought Iowa would get the best of them. Obviously, I was wrong, and you were right, though.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not gonna rub the salt in the wound because this is an Indiana team, Kevin, that 2 weeks ago we pretty much buried. We had them in the ground and the dirt on top of them, and all of a sudden they caught the hot streak. Let's move up. We'll skip over the Michigan State game because that's not a whole lot to talk about there. But let's go to that Michigan game. To me, this was going to be one of the intriguing games, one of the games that I thought was going to be a good nail-biter, grind them out, physical-type game, and boom. Michigan just annihilated Illinois. It looked like Illinois was out of their element. And it's funny because I turned the game on, and you see Michigan playing in these god-awful I didn't know they were the practice uniforms at first. I'm like, what kind of uniforms are these? Until I was actually looking on the Internet. They had to play in their practice unis. And it reminded me, Kevin, of the movie Hoosiers. And, I mean, what a movie to remind you of during the Big Ten tournament, right? But they had these god-awful yellow practice reversibles, blue shorts. Nobody had the same type sneakers on. They looked like a bunch of misfits out there. But these misfits went out today, and they proved, though, to me, Kevin, today, that they're more than just a good shooting team. They actually played, and again, I liked every single one of these games. I actually thought the most boring game was Michigan State-Penn State. But when I looked at Michigan-Illinois, I thought this was going to be that grind-em game, the physical game. But, man, Michigan, they might have looked like misfits, but they certainly didn't play like misfits. They played very good team basketball. I mean, you look at the teams that played today. We just mentioned Indiana, and we mentioned Michigan. They're playing really good basketball. Would it be unrealistic to say that number 8 Michigan could play number 10 Indiana in the final? I don't think it would be unrealistic. The way they're playing. And if I'm the team, if I'm Purdue, and we mentioned this, I think Purdue is ready for the taking because they really don't have anything to play for other than, let's go to win the Big Ten tournament. Michigan has a lot to play for, even though they're probably a lock to make it now. But Michigan is playing good basketball, and if Purdue doesn't come with their A game, they're going to find themselves in a hole tomorrow. And I don't know if they can come out of that hole against Michigan because the way they played today against a very good Illinois team, they pretty much just threw their weight around, literally. They were aggressive. They played good defense. They got back defensively. They did everything right today in this 20-point blowout, and they're playing really good basketball. If I'm Purdue, you better come with your A game tomorrow. Same with Wisconsin. This Indiana team is coming to play. And we just mentioned it. Purdue hasn't played a game yet. Wisconsin hasn't played a game yet. Yeah, people will say they've got rest. But to be honest, in tournament time, if I'm a coach, and I've coached in tournaments before, I'm okay playing that game, especially when it's a good game, because I don't need to go into the locker room. I don't need to pump my guys up. I don't need to pat them on the back. I don't need to kick them in the rear. They're already jacked up because they played a good game the day before. They're ready to get out there and do it again. So that's why I think number 1 and number 2, they better watch out tomorrow because they got their hands full.
Yeah, I could talk an hour off of what you just said, but two very quick things before I get to Michigan. Northwestern over Rutgers today. Northwestern won by 22 points. They went on a 31-0 run. They were down by, I think it was like 9-6, and then they were up 37-9. They went on a 31-0 run against Rutgers in their victory. So that was absolutely insane. That was something I had never seen. I watched plenty of basketball over the years. Never seen a 31-0 run in college basketball or high school basketball or the NBA. It was insane.
They must have had great kickstart on the bench.
Exactly. They drink your grape kickstart. They go 4-0 for the day. They go on a 31-0 run. It all makes sense. But so the other thing I wanted to bring up, Michigan State, Penn State, you lost over it. And, the only thing I wanted to say about that one was Michigan State shot 49% from the field. Penn State shot 29%. Michigan State played a great game. Offensively, Bridges and Ward did their thing, but they held Penn State to shoot 29% from the field. If Michigan State really wants to do something dangerous in this tournament and the NCAA tournament, it's playing defense, and that's what they did today. But it was over Penn State, so make of it what you will. With Michigan, I guess before getting into Michigan, the other thing that popped into my head, like I said, I could talk for an hour based on what you just mentioned over the last 5 minutes. But so I was covering a Wisconsin high school basketball team, and they were in the state tournament, and the coach was happy to play in, I forget exactly what seed he was, but he was 1 seed off in his regional of getting a first-round bye. And that meant that essentially his team had to play the worst team in his regional. And I think he was the 6th seed. He was the 6th instead of the 5. And in the second round, the 4 seed played the 5 seed. His team got the 6 seed. So if his team would have got the 5, they would have got that bye. They would have had an extra day's rest, but they would have had to travel and play the 4 seed as their first game in the postseason. He was happy that they got the 6 because they could build that confidence against the worst team in the regional, the number 11 seed, and then go in, have to hit the road and play the 3 seed, but at least you're building confidence, and, your team could get a game under their belt and feel fresh, feel ready. It's a tournament. It's okay to have 1 game under your belt. You're not going to, they're high school kids. In this instance, they're college kids. They're not going to get tired after playing 1 game the day before. You're going to be perfectly fine. If you play 4 games in 4 days, with a limited bench, you can see some rust in the second half and just fatigue set in. But over a 2-day, even 3-day stretch, you're fine playing game after game after game. I don't think that's a problem. That was in high school, so I figured I'd bring that up. You mentioned these teams, Indiana getting a game under the belt, a 20-point win over a quality opponent, Michigan getting a 20-point win over Illinois, a quality opponent. Those were 2 teams, Illinois and Iowa, fighting for their lives, and they got blown out. So that's what Michigan and Indiana can do. I'm fully with you that, I ultimately have thought Purdue is the top team in the Big Ten this entire year. I've said that since day one of this podcast, and I'm sticking with it. That's why I picked them to win this Big Ten tournament before it started. I think Purdue is the best overall team, but like you said, they don't necessarily have a ton to play for. They proved that they were the best team in the regular season. They won the Big Ten conference over the regular season by 2 games. So if they come into this tournament thinking they're the top dog and, Michigan, who cares? We're in the NCAA tournament. We're around that 3 through 5 range. They're probably about a 4 seed right now, but they're not going to be worse than a 5 no matter what Purdue does tomorrow. So, how high is their intensity level? How much do they really want to be there? I guess we'll find out tomorrow. But Michigan, I think Michigan has a lot to play for because they know that they're kind of one of those middle seeds, and if they make a run in the Big Ten tournament and possibly win it, then they can jump up. They can be that team that, makes you say, wow, this team's a 5 seed now. They were an 8-9 before the conference tournament started. It's crazy how high they jumped. Or, I thought this team was a 4 or 5 seed, and then they go up and the selection committee gives them a 2 seed. It's like, wow, that's insane. How did that happen? Well, it's because they got hot and the selection committee looked at the last 10 games and they went 9-1 and won the Big 12 tournament or something like that. One of those teams always happens every year that just jumps your eye because you think they're a 5 seed and they end up a 3, or you think a team's a 4 seed and they end up a 7. one of those teams always jumps out every single selection committee year. Some team has that surprise run, or some team gets a seed that's you laugh at because you thought they were a much better team. A team like Michigan, in this case for Indiana, it's just making the tournament. I think these teams have a lot to play for, and they're showing it because they're winning games by 20 points against quality opponents. So I'm 100% with you that Purdue and Wisconsin need to watch out, and would not surprise me at all to see either of those two juggernauts go down, yet I have them playing in the final. That's how open I think this Big Ten tournament is, and that's how much I respect Michigan and Indiana being able to get hot from three.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting tomorrow. Yeah, I'd mentioned to you today that I work from home so I can catch these games on TV, and I'm glad I did, even though they're blowouts. Like I said, you're talking now about day two, and now, moving forward into tomorrow's games. I mean, you look at this slate, and that's how we're going to end the show. Pretty much like we thought outside of Indiana. I mean, you're looking at the teams that had the double bye. So we're looking at Purdue versus Michigan. That's what we thought. Minnesota versus Michigan State. That's what we thought. So this is the top part of that bracket is basically chalk. It is 1 versus 8, 4 versus 5. Even the bottom, pretty close to chalk outside of Indiana. But Wisconsin versus Indiana, Maryland versus Northwestern. We'll just go over these again quickly, Kevin. When you look at it, it's a game where, Michigan is coming in, and they could really do some damage to Purdue. That Minnesota-Michigan State game, to me, though, that's the game that I really want to watch. I know that it's the late game. It's 7 o'clock, or no, it's a afternoon game, 25 minutes after the first game, late afternoon. That game, to me, is going to be interesting because, like you said, Michigan State, they put the hammer down defensively against the Penn State team. Yeah, it's Penn State, but you know what? They shot pretty well against Nebraska. Penn State's streaky. I give credit to Michigan State's defense. Then that Wisconsin-Indiana game, again, if Blackman and company come out and shoot the ball, that could be a good game. And we'll see what Wisconsin team wants to show up. They haven't been a very good first-half team, so we'll see if this is a tale of two halves tomorrow. Will it be all Indiana in the first half and then Wisconsin trying to come back in the second half? The problem I see there, Kevin, is if Indiana shoots the lights out in the first half and gets this big lead, will Wisconsin have enough firepower to come back in the second half? I don't know. And then that Maryland-Northwestern game, that's going to be one of those games where we know Northwestern's going to come with defense, and can they shut down Trumbull? And if they can shut down Trumbull, it could be a long day for Maryland. It's going to be a great day in the Big Ten for me tomorrow to just watch. I mean, I get excited about this. I'm like a little kid in a candy store, Kevin. You got 4 great matchups. There's not a bad game in the Big Ten tomorrow.
Yeah, it's crazy how much we have kind of bashed the Big Ten and how, if no team made the Sweet 16 this year, wouldn't surprise me. And we always look at the top 25, and there's probably one team in the top 15 or 17, 18 teams from the Big Ten, and then there's like 1 or 2 at the back end of the top 25, and it's like, wow, this is really a down year for the Big Ten. And yet here we are in the quarterfinal round with 8 teams, and exactly what you mentioned, every single game is captivating, and it'll be very interesting to see. You meant, I mean, just looking at the slate of games, if there was one more boring game, one more that I'm, I guess, not as inclined to see, to me personally, it would be Michigan State, Minnesota, and yet that's the one you pointed out that you really wanted to see. Because I'm very excited to see Purdue, Michigan. I want to see the best team in the Big Ten play a team that is just on fire as of the last 9-10 games and is hitting every 3-point shot they take in Michigan. I think that's going to be awesome to see. Wisconsin, Indiana, basically the exact same thing. Wisconsin is a juggernaut in the Big Ten year after year, and they've been top 2 in the Big Ten throughout the season. And here's Indiana coming along, chugging around 95 points. Whenever they shoot the ball well, they easily score 90 points. You mentioned before the show started, to me that Indiana was easily capable of scoring 100 against Iowa. And so when Indiana plays well, they can easily score 90. No question about it. Northwestern, Maryland, like you said, I'm very interested to see Melo Trimble against a really good defense. And Maryland's been sitting on the sidelines for a while, had a questionable end of the season. Northwestern's coming in. They look really strong now, and Chris Collins has his team playing, I think, as well as they've ever played because it's the end of the year, and he's a really good coach. And this is a team comprised of 7-8 really good players, no stars, but they play really good defense because they know they have to. And so I fully expect a defensive battle, but it should be really interesting to see a star in Trimble go against a team of really solid players in Northwestern. So Minnesota, Michigan State, again, Minnesota is just kind of a more talented group, more talented version of Northwestern, I guess, if you want to call it that way. You got 7-8 players who are really strong, no real stars, and Michigan State's got a bunch of young freshmen, essentially 4 freshmen who are going to be dynamite next year and years to come. I'm sure Bridges goes in the NBA after this year, but the other 3, in Winston, Ward, and Langford, they should be studs going forward for Michigan State. They're coming around and they're playing like sophomores already. They're going to be really good next year. Michigan State is going to be really good, no question in my mind. But that's the one game that I guess is barely lacking to me, but all 4 of them are really captivating in their own way. And you mentioned that's the one you really want to watch. So I've got Purdue going past Michigan. I've got Michigan State going past Minnesota. We differ there. And then I've got Wisconsin moving past Indiana. You like Indiana, but we both like Northwestern in the upset over Maryland. So all 4 of these games are really good, despite how much we've downplayed the Big Ten this year, all involving 8 really interesting teams. Going to make for a heck of a day in Big Ten basketball on Friday.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Kevin, if Michigan could pull the upset and Indiana can pull their upset, we talked about a month ago that I thought, and you were kind of with me there, and you were probably wavering more towards 6, but we really drew the line at 5 solid teams about a month ago. Should Indiana and Michigan win tomorrow, Michigan, if Indiana wins and then they could somehow get by into that final, these 8 teams playing tomorrow, you could see all 8 in the NCAA tournament. The Big Ten could throw 8 teams into the tournament at that point. So, it's pretty funny how just like a month ago we thought maybe there was 5 solid teams that we thought could be in the tournament. And now we're looking at it going, hey, after tomorrow, should the chips fall into place, you could see 8 Big Ten teams. I could now see that happening the way that these teams have ended the season. But with that said, Kevin, another show after the Big Ten tournament, and tomorrow night we'll get right back at it, and then we'll be down to 4. So hope you enjoyed the show tonight, everyone. For the youngster, Kevin Cunningham, a.k.a. Kid Cunny on Twitter, I am Old Man Troy, Troy Robert 967 on Twitter. Enjoy your night. We'll get back at you tomorrow.